Yeah, look, so we've just announced this new strategy about a half an hour ago, timed beautifully with this conference. Actually, it's because I was a bit slow off I had writer's block yesterday trying to get the announcement written up. I was so excited. So anyway, I had a couple of goes at it and I finally got it finished at about 5 o'clock this morning. And then we just had to go through the process of verifying with everybody. So it got released at about 1 o'clock. So I got there just with half an hour to spare. So I'm glad some of the speakers took a bit longer. Talking about the Poseidon assets, and there's a bit of history there with me. So what we've got is a lot of assets in the right commodity at the right time in the cycle. So we've got nearly 400,000 tonnes of nickel. So we'd have one of the biggest resources bases globally of a small cap nickel miner. We've got 2 processing plants, one at Silver Swan or Black Swan that can do about 2 million tonnes, and we're looking at restarting that at about 1.1 million. I'll explain about that in a minute. And then sort of almost long forgotten, but soon not to be, Lake Johnson with an ore body and a 1.5 million tonne mill. We've got a gold tailings project at Windara, which is the old Western Mining Beasley Creek, I think it was, and Lancefield, which was treated there after they stopped mining nickel and processing nickel. We've just done a feasibility study on that, and that's come up really nicely. About just over 150,000 ounces of gold, produces about 55,000 ounces at a relatively nice cash cost. So we're looking to develop that project sooner rather than later, probably bring a partner in to sort of share the risk so that we can keep our primary focus on the nickel. We're targeting production right at the end of next year, so sort of Christmas present for 2022. And we've got a lot of high-grade exploration hits as well, and some good news coming out there. Good board with some very experienced people, a couple of people representing our major shareholders, of which we've got Wyloo, which is the Forest Group, and Black Mountain, Dean and Felicity. Peter Michelli came on board not long after I joined. Peter's got a massive track record, obviously, with Mincor in discovery of nickel sulphide, so he's a fantastic acquisition. And Brendan joined a few months before me, and Derek's obviously got a track record in directing some pretty serious companies, including Sandfire. Capital structure, about 3 billion shares in issue. It's a lot when you see it on a piece of paper. Share price today is about 11.5, so market cap's just under 400 million bucks, and we've just had a very successful capital raising done by Morgans for us and MST Access about 4 weeks ago. Massively oversubscribed. We went out to raise 20 and we had multiples of that in the book within 2 hours. So we upscaled that just a couple of million bucks. So we took $22 million in placement. Then we did a SPP, sort of targeting 3, got 13.5 million bucks into the book. So we scaled that up to 6. So we've got about $30 million in the bank. So we're probably the best capitalised we've been for certainly 3 years anyway, which is great. Black Mountain and Tatarang just under 12% each, so 24% in total. And then the rest of it is made up with some high net worths, some previous directors, and then sort of mums and dads. So let's talk about the nickel market. Obviously, we all know about the electric vehicle revolution. So, everyone's got to have a battery. Battery's got to have lithium, nickel, lithium, cobalt, copper to get it around the car. And look, the thing that I really like is this slide here, which is, nickel demand growing from about 2.5 million tonnes, 70% of which goes into making stainless steel. Stainless steel has grown compound since 1970 at about 5% per annum. So that's been the real growth for nickel demand. When I started in nickel 30 years ago, about 1 million tonne a year market. Now it's 2.5 million tonnes. But the growth of the continued growth of stainless steel, 5% compound, plus this new demand for nickel in batteries is going to sort of supercharge the nickel demand. And I'm actually not sure where all the nickel is going to come from. So I saw today that Vale's just announced they're going to develop pommel. Now that's been around since I was about 2 years old, I think. So that's a long time, over 50 years, and it's always been talked about, but they're actually going to press the button. So that just demonstrates to me that we are going to have this higher, I'll go back. That point there is just about, you need higher prices to incentivate some of these. This is a big HPL plant. It's probably going to cost them, who knows, $10 billion. I don't know, it'd be a big number. But these projects only go when you've got a really strong outlook on nickel, and you're going to be able to, get a lot of investment money in from banks and the market. So I think we're staring down the barrel of some pretty big nickel prices, and as a result, we're very bullish at Poseidon about getting our assets going again. Which leads me into Black Swan. That's the processing plant that sits there today. Replacement cost on a 2 million tonne plant, where the engineers in the room, 150 million bucks, you know, probably more today, maybe 200 if you add all the infrastructure there. That's sitting there, that last operated in about 2010. There's the 150,000 tonne plant sitting just in there, the one that we built when I was involved at MPI. Then there's the big processing plant which can do 2 million tonnes. The refurbishment cost on that is very insignificant, you know, and time-wise too, compared to building a new one and getting all the approvals. So historically, there's been nearly 200,000 tonnes of nickel in concentrate produced from Black Swan, Silver Swan, primarily from the high-grade underground, but also from the big open pit as well. And what happened was MPI developed a small project, and then Lion Ore came along. They got taken over by Norilsk for $7 billion. People forget there was a big takeover, and this was one of the main assets. And Norilsk actually increased the size of the plant from 600,000, which Lion Ore had done, up to 2 million tonnes. And then obviously treating the low-grade disseminated open pit, but also putting through Silver Swan material. So we just want to emulate that again. It's not rocket science. The whole focus now is on filling that mill. We're now focused on Black Swan open pit, high-grade Silver Swan and Golden Swan underground, a little bit of tailings just to get the MGO levels right, and then potentially bringing down Windara ore. Windara has a couple of big resources. There's 150,000 tonnes of underground material, but there's no mill. The mill was taken down many years ago. So we could truck it here, or we could sell it to BHP at Leinster. We don't mind. Whatever makes the most money, we'll do. And then the other option is anything that's in the vicinity, we could obviously treat that as well if we've got the big mill going. So it's all about the big mill, and it's all about filling it up. And we're obviously increasing the resource base and reserve as we go along. And we've got 2 rigs going full-time at the moment, and I think they'll be there for maybe a couple of years, who knows. This goes back to 95 when I was working at MPI. That's David Burt in the middle. That was the discovery hole, 14 metres, I think it was about 50 metres of 14% nickel. So within 6 months, with 2 drill rigs going full-time, Western Deep Holes, proved up a 60,000 tonne nickel resource at 14% average. So we were mining it 2 years later in 1997, and it was so valuable that they were putting in concrete floors in the drives, and they had like a street sweeper, and they were sweeping up all the dust and putting that through because it was just so valuable. So hopefully we'll be having another one of those street sweepers up there in the next 6 months or so. That was a big ore body, and that obviously got the project going. And then, as I mentioned, it became much more of a deep underground mine, open pit you can see there. And Silver Swan initially was up here, then they mined Signet, and then they came all the way down here. And there's still about 16,000 tonnes of 9.5% material sitting down the bottom there, which we'll mine. And then about March of last year, we put a drill hole over here on a very weak EM conductor, and up popped 10 metres of 8% nickel, thanks very much. And then we put 3 more holes in and got 3 decent intersections. And so we've been drilling that out for the last sort of 6 months, and we've just finished all that work. We've just put out all the assay numbers, and we'll have a maiden resource for Golden Swan probably in about 5 weeks' time, and then we can convert that into a reserve hopefully and add that to the mining inventory, and that starts to build that number up, you know, very close to 200,000 tonnes of nickel. So the feed will come from basically a combination of the open pit and those underground ore bodies as well. This is an area of the Southern Terrace that's very underexplored. So we're currently putting holes down from Gosling down between sort of the bottom of Gosling and the top of Golden Swan. There's an area in there that is untested. And there's also obviously areas down here. So currently we finished that 15,000 tonne program, and we've now switched those 2 rigs over, web drill rigs, to drilling those targets out, or this area out here, sort of up plunge from Golden Swan, and also a fair bit of area down around Golden Swan. So what we're trying to do is upgrade the Golden Swan reserve. There's 16,000 tonnes in resource at Silver Swan down the bottom there, only about 6,000 tonnes in reserve. So we'll tighten up the drill patterns and hopefully increase that reserve, and that'll help with the the mine scheduling for the big mill. And at the same time, we're doing all that exploration work around the Golden Swan area too. So this is the big mill initiative. So GR's did a sort of a scoping study for us, which we released about a month ago. It certainly dawned on us that the 150,000 tonne mill certainly made sense, just treating the high grade. But with nickel at $9 today and probably going to go a lot higher and stay there for a fair bit longer, it made a bit of sense to think about, just filling up the mill. So we've gone for the 1.1 million tonne case. We're going to do a full feasibility study on that, which will be kicked off in about October. Just waiting for some metallurgical test work to be done, and then we can start that, and that'll finish in sort of mid-February. CapEx is only $20 million. I mean, we're so lucky to only have to spend that much money. Now, I imagine there'll be some cost escalation between when that number was done and when we start next year, but even so, even if it's 20%, it's still not a big number. OPEX under $30. I mean, this is fantastic. And as I said, the ore sources are a combination of open pit, underground, potentially a bit of stockpile, the Silver Swan tailings, which is about, there's a fair bit of nickel in that, but it's more about it's just mostly iron, so there's not much MgO, so that'll help with the iron-MgO ratio, which will get it to a very, very saleable concentrate. And then we've got Windara potentially coming down, and there are some sort of stranded assets close by, small juniors have got hold of, and if they want to come and talk to us, we'll have some capacity in the mill for them, and we'll have some interesting conversations, I'm sure. That's a very, very detailed slide, but I'll just bring you into basically here we are today, and in 15 months we could be putting ore through the mill. And, you can't really do that anywhere else. The only other person, well, the other two guys that are close are obviously Mincor and Panoramic, where I used to work. So they're the only three assets in Australia that could be producing nickel within the next sort of 15 months. In terms of new projects, I mean, obviously Western Areas have got Odysseus, which is as well, but that's pretty much it. And if Western Areas gets taken over, there's really only three other investments you can have in pure nickel in development operating assets. That's Panoramic, us, and also Mincor. So quickly on Lake Johnson. That's the mill at Lake Johnson, another 150,000 tonne mill just sitting there, beautiful. Another $150 million to replace, possibly more today, and we're about to do a restart study on that as well. There was about 100,000 tonnes of nickel again produced out of this asset by Lion Ore and then Norilsk, shut down in 2014. We picked it up for $1 million in cash. And we've been looking at restarting this a number of times, but the nickel price has not been right. Now it is, and we can go back and redo that study. Does that mean I've got 2 minutes to go or what? Yeah? 2 minutes, okay, thank you. Have to speak even faster. So basically what we're looking at here is there's a big exploration story here. We've just unpacked all the exploration data. New Exco have spent nearly 3 months doing that, and we're going to prioritise quite a lot of new targets. There's about 14 kilometres of strike here, and it's really not very tested at all. Abbey Rose was 10 metres at 3%. If we can follow up that with an ore body, then you've got a fantastic project. And there's also some other geological theories there that need to be tested too. So we'll get on the ground there next year. Windara, just quickly, that's the old milling circuit, which is obviously gone now. Again, nearly 85,000 tonnes of nickel produced by Western Mining over a period from 74 to 83. There's still quite a bit of nickel there. The previous management discovered Cerberus, nearly 70,000 tonnes of nickel, about 1.5%. There's also Mount Windara. So we're looking at underground mine, processing the ore either at Black Swan or selling it to BHP, plus the gold tailings project, which we're looking to partner up with somebody. Great opportunity there, more exploration potential too. So, it's just prioritising. So prioritise for us is Black Swan, Lake Johnson, and then Windara in that order. So in terms of the future, you got the maiden Golden Swan resource and reserve to come out before Christmas, convert more of that Silver Swan resource to reserve before Christmas, or certainly into the first quarter, keep drilling the Southern Terrace potentially for some more high grade, complete that BFS on the 1.1 million tonne plant, and make a financial investment decision by May. But we're going to have a preliminary one by the end of the year, because we might be able to do a fair bit of pre-works. With $30 million in the bank, you could do a fair bit of work in the interim, so you could actually truncate that time frame, or certainly make sure it doesn't blow out. Mount Windara, study mining and processing the ore through the Black Swan plant or selling it to BHP, and fast-track the development of the gold project because it's ready to go. The feasibility study's been completed. And Lake Johnson, finish that review, start some drilling on the high-priority targets, and then dust off that feasibility study that was done and see when you could restart Lake Johnson. So, you know, we could see ourselves, you know, all the way through to a 20,000 tonne a year nickel producer. I was involved in one of those previously. That was Panoramic. When it got to 20,000 tonnes, the market cap was over $1 billion. I can easily see this business with a higher nickel price heading towards that sort of valuation quite quickly. So I'm very excited. Thank you very much.
I was looking for a natural stop then. I was looking for a natural spot.